Hello, my true crime lovelies. How are you? I hope you are well. Sorry for the last minute notice. I just saw um is it schizoid? Schizoid? J schizoid? I hope not either. Actually, I don't care. They take it for what it's worth. But yeah, this is I saw the filings. They're actually um date stamped for Friday, but it seems like they were one of those ones. Remember when the JA said some of them have to be manually approved and others go straight through? But basically, there's 3 motions that, Sarah has filed. So one is in response to the state's motion to strike her motion to rely on the battered spouse defense. And then it seems like they cured the, defects, and so they filed an amended version of the battered spouse submission. I haven't read it all the way through, so we'll be surprised together. And then they've got some depositions. No, Alicia, he's at school. I'm actually I was supposed to he had a dentist appointment this morning, and then, he wanted to nap afterwards, and so he didn't even get to school till 1 o'clock. And I've got family in town that I'm supposed to be meeting, but I was like, I need a little rest." And, of course, I had to check the Sarah Boone docket and these 3 things, so I was like, "I gotta bring it to the true crime lovelies, they're gonna wanna know." So yeah, hey, Pamela, how are you? Um Good to see you too. I'm glad to be doing a live talk, mom. This I was like, I actually wanna hear what you guys have to say in real time. So, I am gonna flash these up. Hopefully, we can get through it and it makes sense. If you're on the replay through, I appreciate you. Drop a little blue heart in the comments if you feel so inclined. Otherwise, we're gonna get right into it. Let me see. How do I wanna share myself? That's not right. Okay, here we go. You guys can see this okay? You guys can hear me okay, right? I'm assuming. Drop a 1 in the chat if you can hear me okay. I'm trying to do it only in this external mic. What did we get in the Okay, I see a 1. Thank you, Val. I appreciate you. Oh my goodness. Okay. Rise of Phoenix, hello. Lunar Magic, hello. Tara, hello. Okay, let's dive in, guys. Without further ado, so obviously, state of Florida versus Sarah Boone. Defense responds to state's motion to strike defendant's notice of intent to rely on the defense of battered spouse syndrome. Comes now the defendant by and through the undersigned attorney and files defendant's response to the state's motion to strike defendant's notice of intent to rely on the defense of battered spouse syndrome and alleges as follows. 1, defendant's notice is legally sufficient. Florida, what is that? Florida Rules of Criminal Procedure 3.201, codified in 1993 and amended through August 29th, 2024, bringing those receipts up until August 29th of this year, specifically recognizes the defense of battered spouse syndrome. See Florida Rules of Criminal Procedure P 3.201. Battered spouse syndrome is synonymous with battered woman syndrome, which is recognized as a subcategory of post traumatic stress syndrome by the DSM-5. So that's the book that has all of the diagnostic something that, like, it determines if you fit the criteria or some of the criteria of different, mental health issues are applicable to you and your situation. Dr. Berry will probably cover that in detail. I'm guessing, I'm hoping. Let's put that energy out there. The rule requires the defendant to give notice of the intent to rely on the defense no later than 30 days before trial. So there's an ellipse there. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that they skipped over just to get to this 30 days. At a hearing before this honorable court, wherein the defense sought a continuance, expressly noting the recent efforts to identify, vet, and pursue expert testimony on behalf of the defendant, Assistant State Attorney Dave Cacciatore Jr. expressly advised the court before any specific affirmative defense had been raised that not only would the state not be prejudiced by the assertion of battered women syndrome, but it already prepared for the possibility of the said defense and had an expert witness that it intended to rely upon to counter any possible assertion of the battered women syndrome. As a result of this position, the state objected to the defense's request to continue the case. Okay. That guy just scared the bejesus out of me. I'm sitting on my bed and I have my the curtains open to my terrace and I'm on the top floor of my building and a man just walked. Sorry guys. Um, because there's construction on the front of the building. He's annoyed the dogs to me. 1 second, guys. I'm so sorry. Sorry, I did not give the dog warning out at the beginning of this video, so they are in the other room. I've closed the door, but you may hear them in the background. Okay, so, we remember Cacciatore saying that in the last hearing that they had, or the only hearing that when James Owens made his first appearance, right? Cacciatore did stand up and say they had an expert on standby anticipating this. I'm not sure. I mean, I guess he's just making the record clear because just because he said he was ready doesn't mean he can't have a motion to strike if he finds that what they filed was defective. The notice of intent to rely on battered spouse syndrome was timely filed by the defense on September 6th. The notice of intent recognized Dr. Julie Harper as the expert as required by the rule. Dr. Harper's address was also provided as necessary. Other witnesses and their addresses have not been identified. However, the violent nature of the relationship between the defendant, Sarah Boone, and the alleged victim, George Torres. Well, see, that makes me annoyed. How can he be the alleged victim? I mean, she could be the alleged murderer, but we know he didn't zip himself up in a suitcase. You know what I mean? Or is that like a turn of phrase you have to use in the is that legalese? Because I mean, he may not be her victim. I see as a defense attorney, you might take that position, but he's clearly a victim, right? Um, anyway, so that was raised by the defendant as early as the interrogation conducted by the homicide detectives the day following Torres's death, as she repeatedly asked the detectives to return her phone to demonstrate prior episodes of violence. Now, see, I've watched that video. Not once did she asked when she was gonna get her phone back, right? But she did not. What she did repeatedly ask is, have they looked through her phone? And there's evidence of bruises and there's evidence of that. That she did repeatedly ask. You catch that? I'm doing my Sarah impression. But I don't remember her repeatedly asking for her phone to be returned. Now, since we've got to court, I would say she's repeatedly asked. She's asked at least the last few times if she can extract information from her phone. Okay, scrolling, sorry. So she asked, the detectives to return her phone to demonstrate prior episodes of violence against her by Mr. Torres. Numerous documents and records produced by the state battered in the instant matter support the possibility, if not the likelihood, of the defendant having suffered from battered women syndrome. He has not seen the body cam footage that we have. To the extent the rule recognizes the possible limitations on the defendant's ability to identify all the witnesses, addresses, and specific nature of their testimony in support of the defense has complied, and the particulars of those supporting events have been apparent to the state, law enforcement, and any entity that has investigated the matter. So that is the clapback, just like the state was like, if the defendant would bother to look, they would find it. Now they're clapping back saying they've complied. It should be apparent to the state and any entity that had investigated the matter. So he's basically like, "Roll the tape, roll that beautiful bean footage," but did he roll it for himself? Because it wasn't apparent to me. It said any entity that has investigated. I have investigated. It's not apparent to me. I don't know if there's a such thing as equally battered or if it's just one, then Sarah is the abuser and George is the battered, in my opinion. It is apparent that not only was the state on notice of the likely reliance on battered women syndrome, it was prepared to respond and is neither surprised nor prejudiced by the defendant's notice of intent to rely on battered women syndrome defense. And I don't think the state said that it was prejudice. I think their main thing was that the mission was defective. It didn't have enough witnesses. It couldn't they asserted that Julie would not be able to use what Sarah said and testify to that, and so they said if it was allowed to move forward, they wanted to restrict her testimony. That was the motion in limine part, and also who else is that Sarah would need to set the foundation, right? Like, this is what happens, so obviously she's gonna have to take the stand. So I think they wanted to put that in writing so there's no surprise later, and then who else witnessed it? Because Sarah could have some other mental health issue, right, that causes her to think she had battered spouse syndrome, you know what I mean? So, I mean, just in the way what does that have when, like, your child is sick by proxy? Munchausen, that's the old name, I know there's a new name, but, like, just like how those parents see something in their children where they think the child is sick or wanna pretend the child is sick and the child is not really sick, Sarah could have that and not actually have suffered battered spouse syndrome. Hey, look, I can't see your comments really good. Just let me scoot back over here, and see what you guys are saying. Hey, AKA the cat lady, um, can't they use all those videos as proof of my blood? Yes, Tracy MG Hernandez. They are trying, but as, Jay Skizzo said, they're trying to say those videos are inadmissible. They haven't said specifically why yet, so I'm curious as to that. I imagine all of that will be heard this Thursday on the 19th, so we'll see. Of course, they would love to get the suitcase video out too, right? The thing is, at least as I'm seeing it with the interrogation video, because she said things like, "It was a good day, we had a good day." You can't simultaneously be having a good day and also be in fear, and then let's just say you were in fear. Once he was in the suitcase, why didn't you call 911? We all know that you are a fan of 911, or just call the regular police while he's in the suitcase, you know, and have him just taken out while he's begging for his life, and then the next day when you find him dead, you still don't call 911. So suddenly, in this instance, you don't know about 911. So, they would have to I think they wanna get all of that, they being the defense, like, taken out because then it makes it easier for them, right? And even though we know about the case, if that's not presented to the jury, then the jury doesn't have that information as part of their decision-making process, so I mean, well played by the defense. Hopefully, the state comes out swinging. I think it's gonna be fiery on Thursday, passion-filled. Um, so further, defendant's notice of intent to rely on the defense of battered spouse syndrome comports with the requirements outlined in Rule 3.20. 1, given the current circumstances of the case, the Florida Rules of Criminal Procedure contemplate situations in which the defense is unable to provide a detailed statement of particulars in the notice of intent to rely on the defense of battered spouse. So he's saying that's already factored into the rules of criminal procedure. That's already factored in that they might not have it. Sometimes, like, people escape after and maybe they don't have all their stuff or hell, maybe they burn the house to the ground and so they don't have access to it, right? So I get what that's saying. However, the state wanted to get it on the record, but they were opposing it. It might be successful, right? You miss every shot you don't take, so why not take a shot? The notice shall contain a statement of particulars showing the nature of the defense the defendant expects to prove and the names and addresses of the witnesses by whom the defendant expects to show battered spouse syndrome insofar as possible. So, sounds like Owens is saying there's some limitation on why they did not provide that. I hope it's not this cell phone, because, ma'am, I've looked at the files. You got several copies of the download given to you. The undersigned is unaware of any Florida cases applying this language to a specific case. Okay. However, a plain reading, so he's saying why he can't cite a case. They looked for it. Oh, excuse me, and they're unaware of it being applied, so they can't give a case citation. That's why he's saying that. However, a plain reading of the rule implies that the court has the discretion to determine that the defense did not have sufficient time to provide a statement of particulars. Okay, so it's up to Judge Cranick. Here, as noted previously, counsel for the defendant had insufficient time to uncover the full nature of the defense and the names and addresses of all witnesses expected to testify. Thus, the defendant's notice of intent to rely. Did I share my screen back with you guys? Oh my God, I didn't. Sorry, I just thought about that. Lord. Okay. This is the thing, though. I feel like Judge Cranick is gonna see through this BS because if this part doesn't sound like a Sarah complaint, we had insufficient time. You, Mr. Owens, may have, but Sarah has had 4 years, 4.5 years worth of time. She's had Billy Lane accessible to her that entire time. So if she thought that this might be a viable defense, right? Like if this is the truth, let me say it that way. If this is truly what happened to her, why is it just now coming up? If she thought it might be even last year, why didn't she have Billy Lane look up this information for these, supposed witnesses, etcetera. So, I get that Owens is new to the case, he knew that coming in that he was new, but also it's Sarah's case, so why hasn't she previously sought out these witnesses who will be able to testify they witnessed her being abused? I tell you who it's not gonna be, what is it, Melissa Sexton, the, old property manager, it's not gonna be it might be that one neighbor, what's his name? I can't think of his name, the one called, one is Vincent, it's not Vincent, it's the other, I think Moats, maybe Brandon Moats. It might be him because he was the one who said George was a bad dude, and that's why I wish Detective Copsall Chelsea had, probed further because he said he didn't interact with him, and then, like, a few sentences later said he was a bad dude. Well, what made him a bad dude? Was it merely based on word of mouth from Sarah and George's appearance, right? Because George had that Philly boy kinda look to him with the cap to the side, he had a tat on his neck, and then if Sarah's over in his ear saying, "Oh, he did this, he did that," that could be, he only knows on, information and belief by way of Sarah, not by eye or ear witness, you know? Okay, the state's reliance on Medina and Hickson is misplaced. Uh-oh. They're telling the state you got it wrong. The state's reliance on Medina and Hickson to preclude reference to battered spouse syndrome and Dr. Julie Harper's testimony is premature. Okay. They wanted to get it on the record. In Medina, the defendant sought to introduce expert testimony during the trial regarding battered spouse syndrome without predicated on without predicating it on facts already in evidence. Well, it seems like that's what you guys were trying to do, right? Like, to rely on it that's what I was saying on the other one, they are stating facts that are not in evidence. We don't have any proof of just her being abused, and even in the video the body worn camera, like, they're mutually, at least in the storytelling of it, going at each other, and that's in Sarah's own story, like, the last one before, the last arrest he had when she was, like, retelling the story to the officer on scene, and he was like, "That's not what you told me before," and he was like, "You told me that you guys were both hitting on each other," and she's like, "I never said that," and then he repeated it, and she was like, "Well, I was being honest with you." So, then you did say it, ma'am. You did say you also hit him. The court affirmed the trial court's decision to exclude the proffered expert testimony because the expert relied on inadmissible hearsay evidence. So I think that's correct because in the state's case, they were saying what Julie Harper was told by Sarah is not admissible unless Sarah testifies, because otherwise it's assuming facts, not in evidence. Only Sarah can get up on the stand and say this happened. That lays the foundation. Then Julie Harper can come on and speak to that. In this case, the state is attempting to use Medina to strike and limit reference to battered spouse syndrome in a pretrial motion. Yeah. However, the defendant has not had the opportunity to lay the foundation for Dr. Julie Harper to testify, mainly because the trial begins on October 7th, 2024. Therefore, at this stage of the proceeding, Medina and Hickson do not preclude reference to battered spouse syndrome and Dr. Julie Harper's testimony. I suspect the state will come back with a motion in limine. If this happens, then that cannot happen, and keep it out of the testimony, right? So if they don't lay the foundation, then that triggers this Medina and Hickson, which I don't even know, I'm not a lawyer, if you need a motion in limine for that, because that's already in the law, but maybe explicitly stated on the record in the event of an appeal. The state is improperly extending the reasoning in Medina and Hickson to Rule 3.201. Medina did not hold that insufficient notice under 3.201 precludes the defendant from utilizing or referencing the defense. Okay. So I don't remember them the state saying that it was an insufficient, or maybe they mean insufficient as in what I'm calling defective. I thought they meant insufficient as like timely, but maybe it's because the state is calling out. The court in Medina does not cite Rule 3.201 or state whether the defendant sufficiently listed a statement of particulars. The court only considers the defendant's failure to present evidence of abuse before the expert's testimony. Okay, so I guess they're gonna enter it elsewhere, like, maybe they're gonna call the police out? The police who responded, like, the body worn camera footage that we've seen are gonna come out, but they also did not witness either of them being hit, actually. They were told and acted therefore on information and belief of the people that were really there, because George never said anything except the time that she strangled him. Furthermore, the state's position mistakenly assumes that Rule 3.201 statement of particulars must list witnesses expected to testify to the battered spouse syndrome defense at trial. As noted earlier, gives Rule 3.201 gives the court discretion to determine what is legally sufficient notice given the circumstances. Specifically, Rule 3.201 states that the defendant must list the witnesses expected to testify insofar as possible. So basically, they're asking the court, we know this is your ultimate discretion, just like the continuance to continue or not is ultimate discretion. However, we're asking you to lean into insofar as possible. So right now, we don't have their addresses. Right now, we don't have their phone numbers because that's required on the witness list. But which I thought you only had to give the name, but it sounds like they're saying it's the whole kit and caboodle. So all that has to be given, and they're not in a position. But I mean, it's the 16th of September. You guys are less than 30 days out. And you're like, chop chop. The state's view of Medina and Hickson would preclude a defendant from presenting the battered spouse syndrome defense. It is impossible to provide a list of witnesses expected to testify to the defense. So the judge can give them a time limit. Like, you need to have enough time for the state to be able to depose these witnesses so they can prepare their cross-examination questioning. Like, are these people going to testify to? What did they see? So the state can then counter that. If they're like, oh, I heard screaming all the time. Do you recognize these voices? Do you know for a fact that it was Sarah? Do you know for a fact that it was George, right, etc.? Um, yeah, they can't just pop up, like, the day before with, "Here, the witness list." So maybe the judge will approve this, but say it's time bound. You have to have this list within, I don't know, I don't wanna say 3 weeks. I feel like we're 3 weeks out from trial, maybe within 2 weeks, they have to have a chance to, like, do their research. The state has to have a chance to do their research on these people. So therefore, Medina and Hickson do not preclude the defendant from referencing battered spouse syndrome in her opening statement. Oh, nor does it preclude Dr. Julie Harper from testifying prior to the defendant testifying. I mean, I guess it doesn't preclude her from testifying, but she can't be the one to establish the foundation for abuse because it's hearsay. It's not from a party opponent. It's from the party itself. She's you know what I mean? It's not like Dr. Julie Harper is saying that the someone on the state side said something. She's on the defense side, and she's saying the defense said that. Like, you can't backdoor testimony in. It should also be noted that defense was moved for a statement of particulars regarding the state's theory of prosecution, to which the state has objected. The state objected that because they said there is no, it's not a requirement for them to list a statement of particulars, and it should be obvious of why, of what happened. There's a dead person was in the suitcase. Someone filmed the dead person's, dying words in the suitcase. That someone is your client. The person who's deceased is her former lover. Um, what's confusing, defense? What's confusing about that? So basically, they're saying, well, you didn't give us a statement of particulars, or you objected to our statement. So I guess you rejected our statement of particulars request. So we're going to reject yours, or at least we're going to note that you objected. Neener, neener, neener. Wherefore, the defendant, Sarah Boone, respectfully moves this honorable court to deny the state's motion to strike, the state's motion in limine, and the state's motion for examination by a state expert. Oh, hell no. No, they didn't get a step too far. How can they deny? They even just cited that the state already had, noted on record that they had someone prepared to examine Sarah. Now they're saying, "No, we're that should be denied. They shouldn't have their own witness examine Sarah." Like, make that make sense. Um, oh, I don't know. I just, okay, the next one we're gonna go I'm gonna look at the comments, but the next thing we're going to look at is they have amended their motion for not enough smoke. Oh my god. They have amended it's wordy. This is like these are wordy documents. I'm doing my best. Did anyone catch the latest interview of one of Sarah's neighbors? I did. I was on that live. Um, yeah. I also wonder, like, how much I trust the neighbor's memory, um, 'cause he seems quite interesting himself, you know what I mean? But he was, like, loaning her money, she wouldn't give him a ride, like, it was and he said himself at that point he was a different person. He was, like, an active addict, now he's in recovery, but I did watch that, so she's a narcissist, histrionic traits for sure, or vice versa, or however you say that in my opinion. I rewatched the police body cam video, and she says to the officer that she wanted to scare him a little bit and have him squirm around. Yes. I believe she said it on the 911 call too, but she definitely said, "Make him squirm a little bit." And then even in the interrogation, she said she wanted to give him 5 minutes, and Scott said, "5 minutes for what?" And then Chelsea overtalked him and said, "Well, it's at least 11 minutes because it's at least 11 minutes in between the video." I wanted to hear her answer to give him 5 minutes for what? Like, are you punishing a grown man? A man who just turned 42, a man who has 3 children of his own, you're punishing him? You're teaching him a lesson? Is that what you're saying? Because that I feel like proves the whole battered spouse, because I don't think like, as a formerly abused person, I would not be teaching my abuser a lesson. I would not risk that. It could go very wrong very quickly. So I do wish Chelsea would have let her answer 5 minutes for what. Um But, we'll see. We'll see. I trust the judicial system. What needs to come in will come in. I very much trust, Judge Cranick, but let's move to this other. Uh, document here. Let me flip it to here. Okay. So you guys should be seeing amended notice of intent to rely on the defense of battered spouse syndrome. Okay. Amended notice of intent to rely on the defense of battered spouse syndrome. Comes now, the defendant, by and through the other side's attorney and pursuant I didn't show you guys on the other one. It was signed by Owens. I'll show you on this one. Sorry about that. Pursuant to Rule 3.201 of the Florida Rules of Criminal Procedure, hereby moves to amend previously filed notice to rely on said defense and states procedural posture. On August 30th, 2024, a notice of appearance was filed in the above filed cause. On September 5th, 2024, expert Dr. Julie Harper met with defendant at the Orange County Jail. So if you guys saw my other video, you know that this is then only her 5th time meeting with Sarah. She met with her 4 times previously since 2020. There are other therapists who have seen her since then, but basically after the case switched from Padilla to Bankowitz, she did not see Sarah again for the September 5th that they're asserting. On September 6th, the notice of intent to rely on the defense of battered spouse syndrome was timely filed. Okay. At that time, the defendant provided the nature of the defense and witnesses insofar as possible. So okay, it's a turn of phrase, I guess. You supplied one witness, but he's quoting what he previously asserted in the response to the motion, like witnesses insofar as possible. So since it was only one, he's still following the rule, whatever. To date, additional information has been obtained through discovery and investigation efforts. Okay. Well, good. So since the 5th or the 6th, since I'm gonna say since the 6th when you filed that, new information has become available. Okay. I think it's ridiculous. I was thinking maybe they would wait until, Thursday, but I guess they wanna have this all on the record, everybody have the response, and then they argue the rest orally. Accordingly, the defense moves to amend the initial notice to proffer the additional information. Okay, come through. BWS, battered woman syndrome, has been described as a condition wherein a woman who has had a long-standing personal relationship with a man in which she is frequently subjected to physical abuse, remains with the man, but eventually acts against him because of her fear that his continued abuse will mortally injure her. Terry v. State, Florida 4th District Court of Appeals, 1985. So, I mean, see, this is where, like, some of the words can be ambiguous because is it a long-term relationship? They were together 3 years. They met in 2017. She murdered him in 2020. Like, and they weren't like, they were on again, off again. I don't know who can testify to that, but it wasn't, like, continuously for that time. And part of that time, Sarah was still married, you know? So okay. At the time of the alleged offense, the defendant was suffering from battered spouse syndrome as a result of the physical and psychological abuse the defendant sustained at the hands of the alleged victim, George Torres. Oh my god. You guys, I just finished reading all her IMS records, her, incarceration. Half of it, the members I've seen already, because I split it into 2 parts while recording it. When I edit it, everyone will see it. Sarah verbally abuses everybody in that jail. I can't imagine that somehow she was docile with George, and he now they may have been mutually abusing each other, but, like, I have, like, secondhand psychological abuse from Sarah from reading through all of her inmate reports. Um, like, the gaslighting is off the charts. Statement of particulars. In particular, the evidence will demonstrate factors that trigger BWS, the physical symptoms experienced during BWS, the distinct behavioral and psychological symptoms exhibited by the defendant that are consistent with a person who suffers from BWS, and the impact of BWS as it relates to the facts of this case. Okay, I'm calling bullshit on BWS because we are now stating that as of the 6th of September, when he filed that motion, he didn't know this, but Julie saw her on the 5th and came to this con she didn't come to it the 4 prior times she met with her, but that one meeting on the 5th has now given her all of this insight into Sarah, into Sarah's mental state, like, is anybody else sus? Does that sound sus? Or am I just, overly suspicious? Expert testimony. Dr. Julie Harper, forensic psychologist, here and after Dr. Harper will be a Category A witness for the defense, establishing this condition on the behalf of the defendant. Now, again, I say she met with her 4 times before that under Padilla. Padilla never filed anything about battered spouse, never entered Julie Harper as a Category A witness. They were weeks before trial when, drew from the case, weeks. So he was inside of that 30-day window required to file battered spouse, so he would not have been filing it, right? Or I mean, he could have been, I guess he could have asked for an extension, but for everything that we know on the record, he hadn't. He was past the timeline, the due date for it to be filed. To date, Dr. Harper has met with and evaluated the defendant on multiple occasions. The visits date back as early as August of 2020. That part is true. Multiple being 5 now. In court, he told, um, Judge Kranig it was 6 times. Then in front of the cameras, it's in the last video where I said, "Is he talking out both sides of his mouth?" In front of the cameras, he said, like, 4 or 5. I mean, again, it could be nebulous, but I just like language. I like it to be correct. I like it to be factual. I expect that from attorneys. I love the way, like, the turn of phrases that attorneys use. I think of all other professions, I mean, I guess besides the writers, attorneys understand the power of language. The witnesses relevant to battered wife syndrome include Dr. Julie Harper, Officer John Alden, agency case number oh, I'm gonna have to look this up later, OCSO 19, incident date 8/28/2019, so I think that is the one where the officer was like, "What happened?" And she kept skipping over, which I can't verify this, but I know in some chats they were saying she wanted him to go because she wanted someone else to come over that night, like company, and she didn't want him there. But that was the night she was drunk at Brian's house. She had the police take her back to her house. She forgot her keys. She had Brian come out with her son to her apartment to give her her keys while the police were there. Like, talk about trauma for your child. Why didn't you just stay at Brian's? But again, if she's trying to have company, then that makes sense why she couldn't stay at Brian's. Because I mean, Brian is a lot of things, but I don't think he's just gonna be like, "Yeah, bring your people over here. Let's all get drunk." Because he cited that as one of the reasons why he didn't wanna be with her anymore, people showing up at 2 o'clock in the morning looking for her. Okay, Officer Kenneth Davis, here's the aid. Don't worry, guys, I will look up all these agency case numbers and do a follow-up on exactly what these are. But this is 9/24/2019. Officer Joseph O'Neill, incident date 6/15/2019, there's the case number. Officer Patrick Swan, Orange County Sheriff's Office, case number 618. So these are all of in the year, actually months before his death. You got um, 6/8/2019. I will note there is no case against either of them in 2017, the first year they were together, and then they had the one in, 2018 where Sarah got arrested. She's actually listed as the aggressor, he's noted as the victim. So I don't know. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, and then Brian Boone, um, the defendant's investigation of evidence to support the defense of battered women syndrome is ongoing. So there could be more, basically, is what he's saying, right? There could be more that comes up as they're investigating it that will be entered subsequently on the record. The defense anticipates additional witnesses, photographs, videotape, medical records, court records, and other evidence gathered from the defendant's phone will be forthcoming. This evidence will be disclosed as it is discovered. So I think that's key. If he's saying it's from her phone, then the state already has it. Because I was thinking, well, anything they have to show to the state, but the state has extracted the phone. Hopefully, they have time, Sarah and her team, to have their own expert extract from her phone. Padilla had received funding for it, but I can't tell in the records if it actually happened, 'cause he didn't need to submit anything after that. It's not like he didn't contest anything, I should say it that way, right? So the state had their extractionist do it, and then Padilla had the defense's extractionist do it, and if there was something that was inconsistent, he would have filed a motion for that, right? Like, if there was a Brady violation, like, Owens came in saying that the state was hiding things from Sarah, somebody would have noticed it by now, but, maybe that's what Sarah told Owens, and on information, I believe he's following up, you know, or doing great client management and saying, "Okay, this is what my client said, let's suss this out," which is possible. Okay, we have one more, and this is just who they are going to depose. Oh, wait, let me go back because I said I would show you guys how the filing was listed. Where is StreamYard? Okay, there we go. So just James Owens, counsel for Sarah Boone. So he's listed as counsel. The other two are listed as co-counsel. I know there are some theories of people who think he's gonna duck out, and have the other 2 try it. It's possible. Anything is possible, but he is listed as counsel, so he's gonna have to be there at some point. The other 2 are listed as co-counsel. So notice of taking depositions. Oh, wait, this may be the state asking for this because this is being sent to the attorneys of Sarah. Yeah, please take notice that the state of Florida will take the oral depositions of the following persons on the date and at the hour indicated below. October 1st, 10 a.m. Central Time, Julie, actually they said July. Come on, spell check. Well, I guess July is actually a word, so it was spell check wouldn't have caught it. July F. Harper, which we're gonna give them grace and say it's Julie F. Harper at Workspaces Suites, which I'm guessing is kinda like what was that one company that went out of business where you could rent offices or whatever? Oh my god. They had the crazy curly-haired CEO, I can't think of it. Somebody knows. Um, anyway, said depositions will be taken in workspace suites, which office has theretofore been designated by the court as a branch of the courthouse for purposes of taking depositions, or as agreed to by both parties. Said depositions will be taken before an official court reporter of the circuit or his designee from Precision Reporting and Video. So I've been deposed before. Every time I get deposed, there is a camera right in front of your face, just really weird. But usually your attorney will coach you before of how to present yourself, like not be fidgety, um, stuff like that. Things that you might not otherwise think of. So I certify that a copy hereof has been furnished to James, Kevin T. Beck, and Tony Hendricks by email on the 13th day of September. So they sent that out on Friday as well. So what do you guys think? Like, what's the business as far as they still haven't listed another person's name? I can't imagine. I mean, if she has a name of someone, why haven't they given it to Billy Lane to get there to do like a skip trace on them, right? To get that person's address and phone number so that if they come up with these people, the state has an opportunity to depose those people prior to trial. Like, what are they waiting for? Um, and it's these yeah, maybe Sarah doesn't know their last name. Maybe she didn't know the last name of all her neighbors. I don't know. Um, but again, like, come on, gumshoe, hit the ground and ask some questions. I bet if he found the property manager, she would at least know their first and last name. Now, would she be willing to cooperate? That's another thing. But I mean, you have a private investigator. You should be able to come up with some names and numbers. Or am I like making it sound too easy? Thank you, Michelle, Mixed Media Madness. I love that alliteration. I'm glad to be live. I know some people are like, you don't give enough notice. Sometimes I don't know. I will get a schedule together. I'm gonna get my life together. But sometimes when it's hot off the presses, I wanna get it to you guys and get your, input on it, and then other times I wanna do a little more research, like, when I find out there's a new attorney or whatever else, I still wanna go back and research these cases that they're citing that they're gonna call the officers in, and of course, now that those have been listed, the state can go and depose those officers, right? The only thing they have is that it's gonna be battered spouse syndrome, so I'm gonna assert my 2 cents. If every one of those incidents where they're asking for those officers to be witnesses, they're going to try to bring in that body cam footage, right? And those officers are gonna be needed to authenticate that because you can't just, like, roll that beautiful scene footage, right, without foundation, and so that is what my inkling is on that. But I just don't know if he's seen those. But, like, the footage, when she's calling the officer baby and honey, the one where she runs outside and is like, "Oh, you're here, and he's not a danger." Meanwhile, they're trying to draw their guns because for Leo, domestic violence cases are some of the most dangerous scenes to show up on. But she's like in the one it's on my channel of when she got arrested, "Oh, you don't have to worry, there's no danger in there, then why are the police here?" And she's like, "I just want you to keep a few of cops in here." She used it as sort of a control mechanism, which is why, like, I know people are like, "Oh, it's a stretch when you mention race," but that's what the police were originally for, was I'm gonna say black people because I know that for a fact. Um it was the people who were enslaved who were running away, the law came to bring them back, to keep them in line, to keep them in their place, and I feel like Sarah used the law in that way with George. Now, maybe if he were white, she would have done the same thing. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with that or stating that that can't be. I'm relaying, like, my perspective on it as how I interpret it. When she's saying, "Put the fear of the cops in him," that is a pure, "I'm going to control you" move, right? Like, if you don't do what I say, there will be consequences, and they will have guns, which is super dangerous because you could get the wrong cop out there who shoots first and then questions later. Um, Maybe it's this very argument issue why the other lawyers and her fell out. Maybe they said nope, and she wouldn't budge. Maybe. I know on the record, Hobson, so the one before Cashman, said that he had an expert psychologist, psychiatrist evaluate Sarah, and Sarah didn't like what the expert was saying, didn't like the outcome that the expert was willing to testify, which I think is super odd slash interesting because if you're asking for an expert, you want their expert opinion. You don't want the opinion you give them to be well, I wouldn't, to be, what they testified to, Like, but that is in the record, and, Judge Crane cites it in his 16-page motion where Sarah forfeited slashed I can't remember what the slash was, but forfeited her right to counsel. Yeah, just I don't get it. If she walks on this, I will totally give up on the judicial system. We're not there yet, dog mom. I mean, it'll be up to the jury. It's gonna be a matter of at this point, jury selection is important, so I trust that the state will give it the time and energy it deserves. And the defendant like, the defense lawyer, it's their job to zealously advocate for their client. I feel like Owens is doing that, he is zealously advocating. But, I mean, we saw that in the Charlie Adelson trial, right? Rashbaum was zealously advocating, but the jury saw through the BS. There are people like you and I, they have common sense, they're gonna use their common sense. Like, when they hear that video of her telling him to shut the F up as he begs for his life, they're gonna have to be a special some kind of person to be like, "Oh, that's okay. That's totally normal." Um, Sherilyn, no way, that ain't happening. I'm with you. We say, "Howdy here, howdy." And if this defense can be excluded right from the start, it'd be a very good thing, and yeah, I think we're gonna see that on Thursday. Well, the judge is gonna answer whether he'll strike it based on the state's motion. He may give it legs and let it kind of play out. We'll see. We'll see how it happens. But I think even if it gets included in and also the interrogation video is allowed into evidence, the jury will see just like you and I see, Stevie Wonder can see, that that doesn't make sense. They had a good day, and then she snapped, put him in by her own words, put him in a suitcase, zipped it up, and then mocked him because the battered wife syndrome skewed her brain to do that at that time instead of call the police. And then also in that last video, the last arrest he had, she states he kicked her because she fell asleep. He doesn't like it when I sleep. Then the next time you're saying you were fearful of your life, zipped him in a suitcase, and you went upstairs and fell asleep thinking he could get out. How does that make sense? If he doesn't like it when you sleep, he hits you when you sleep, he attacks you when you are asleep. He is gonna be hopping mad if he can get out of that suitcase and comes upstairs and finds you sleeping. Whew, I mean, please let them have, like, a jury that has common sense. Uh-oh. Mr. Cacciatore, I have faith in you, so to be a bulldog in this trial, and Mr. J. I've liked all of the filings that Mr. J has submitted on this case. He's got his ish together. Um, Look at Casey Anthony Casey. But Dog Mom, they overcharged Casey, didn't they? Like, they didn't include any lessers. That's why I think also the state's been smart with this and charged her with the second degree. Second degree murder is still a first degree felony in Florida. It still holds life without, or does not life without, but it still holds a punishment of a life. It still holds a punishment of a life sentence. So I think the state in the Casey Anthony case did not prove beyond a reasonable doubt what they charged. If they had a lesser charge included, they might have gotten. I didn't watch all the evidence, but just based on conversation, that's what my understanding is. That one is the trials with the kids are hard for me. Sometimes I can watch it, sometimes I can't. Yeah. And trials in general, because I feel like even after the Charlie Adelson trial, I was, like, left empty. I was glad that he was convicted, but then there's, like, all these emotions that you don't know what to do with. But I absolutely felt like he had a fair trial. He got to put on the defense that he wanted. He got to testify the way he wanted. So the system is working, right? And it was a successful outcome in terms of holding him accountable for his actions, but it's still like you're never gonna bring that person back no matter how much, you there's no closure. Like, I remember testifying at my, brother's murderer's trial, and you think it's gonna be satisfying in some way. I mean, I guess technically it is because if they weren't convicted, that would be a whole other emotional roller coaster, so in some sense, I guess it's satisfying, but it still leaves you emotionally raw, like, is George's mom's life gonna be significantly changed once, Sarah is adjudicated? Will his kid's life be significantly changed? You know what I mean? Like, it's not like they can sue her for compensation or whatever, and they have to live without the benefit of having a father. They have to live without the benefit of growing up, um without a father. So and I know there are some statistics, like children who grow up without a father are more likely to end up in abusive relationships, they're more likely, to be abused, like, it's a whole cycle, you know? And then for the rest of your life, people will say something about your dad, and you'll be like, "Oh, my dad's no longer with us," and then if for some reason they haven't heard of this case and you explain, imagine being 21 dating someone and having to tell the story of how your dad died, do you know? And then Sarah's behavior afterwards is just reprehensible. Because even if it was an accident, which is what she asserted, I mean, if I accidentally step on someone's toe, I'm more remorseful than Sarah is about accidentally murdering George. I would love to see a female prosecutor introduced to question her. She is used to manipulating men. This would change things big time, I'm sure. Ooh, I think you're right, Britt. I think you are absolutely right. Hello, is it Twyla late? You're just on time, honey. You are just on time. I cannot picture her sitting there and shutting up and not saying anything, and she is so comfortable about what she wants to put out there. I hope they are doing client management as far as preparing her for sitting there and being still. I don't know. Her between Sarah and Donald Adelson, those faces that they make are not going to fare well with the jury, especially if you're sitting there accused of murder. Try to show a little contrition, um, if for no other reason than being sorry that person is dead. Like, I remember in the Robert Tejas trial, he just didn't seem sorry that the man died, never mind that he was being accused of it, you know what I mean? Like, he was just like, "Oh, it was a hitman who was out to get." Well, then, even in that scenario, you have some responsibility in his death, right? Because had this alleged hitman not been out to get you, Cameron would still be alive. He just was like, yeah, he was very flip about it. So I just feel like the jury will see all of that. I remember being on a jury and definitely looking at the defendant. His wife had testified, so I was also looking at his wife while she was sitting in there. Actually, he was the plaintiff. He wasn't even the defendant. But I looked at the plaintiff and the defendant. It was a civil trial. You just look for things, you know? I'm a people watcher, so I like to try and read what people what's going on and infer different things, like Rashbaum sniffing his nails throughout the trial. He had to have been scratching somewhere, otherwise, what are you sniffing? Go wash your hands off. But, like, little stuff like that, we're human, we're gonna have interpretations whether we consciously do or subconsciously. It's like that old, well, I don't know how old it is, but men will tell you, especially black men will tell you they'll pass someone on the street and they'll, like, grab their purse a little tighter. Meanwhile, this person has 6 degrees. Not that you can't be a thief with 6 degrees, but it's just that reaction that they have based on how they normally walk through the world. So it's just a thing. Um, and I think that the jury is gonna get a feeling for Sarah, right? I mean, I will say she's even more horrible now to me after seeing her in court than she was just from the video, right? Because she's just nasty all the time. Maybe because before I was like, well, maybe she was having a bad day. There was something else going on. Like, I mean, I knew that it was intentional, even despite her saying otherwise, but I was willing to like engage the mitigating factors as to how she got to there. Now, seeing, like, how she gaslights people, how she's argumentative, how she will repeat things and, like, wear people down again and again, like, George was the same for even dealing with her. Do you know what I'm saying? So, they're gonna have to really work to contain her in court so that the jury doesn't, like, pick up on all the vibes that Sarah puts out. Um, yeah. Sherilyn, yes, true, those cases are rare. I believe chances are slim for her walking. Can't say never, but it would be a shocker. I mean, I feel like the state feels like they have a good case too, Sherilyn, because they're playing hardball with whatever deal that Sarah was that Owens was trying to get on Sarah's behalf versus what the state was willing to give. They said no. I feel like Sarah probably was looking for time served or, maybe 5 more years or whatever, and they're like, "Nope, we have more confidence in our case than that." So, like, maybe they would get it down to manslaughter and give her 25 years. She would be in her 60s when she got out or something like that. Maybe they would, and then that saves them the cost of continuing because we know, what was it? Carrie's channel said it was, like, 71,000 the JAC has already paid. That doesn't even count what the prosecution team, what their expenses are on this as far as, like, detectives and research and investigation, interviews, all of that. So it's well over probably 100, $200,000 in costs that have been spent and counting on this case, by the taxpayers of Florida. His brother mentioned to the detectives that George, rest in peace, was sad when drunk, not violent. Yeah, he did say he was, like, super emotional too, and would cry. In my opinion, he had the demeanor of the abusee, not her. He was the battered spouse. I think so too. And one of you guys said in, the comments, which I hadn't even thought of that, how Sarah repeatedly said it was her phone, and you made the point of if he were the abuser, it wouldn't be she wouldn't have had control over the phone. But you remember in Judge Craig's Dr. Pepper keeps going in and out. Sorry, Judge. Oh, it's the microphone that's in the way. Enjoy your Dr. Pepper, Judge Cranick. But he didn't have a passcode to that phone, and it did not recognize his face. He would have to put it up to Sarah's face. So that does not sound like the dominant one, right? Again, I've been in actually multiple abusive relationships. Therapy is a beautiful thing. and they would have control over my devices, where I was going, when I was going. So yeah, I agree with that assessment of just by the phone use alone. He had to have her permission to use the phone. That is not what an abuser does. They take over all of your stuff. Honey, I had one driving my second car like it was his, riding it till literally the wheels rolled off. So, yeah, um Sarah can't sit and not intervene. In her mind, she's above everyone. No one is as smart as her in her mind. I agree. She's gonna be making faces, she's gonna be making comments. Like, we see a lot of the trials where the defendant is at the table, the defendant, whispering to their lawyer or nudging them or writing furious notes, and, they're gonna have to ask, I mean, not that she'll listen, but I believe they're going to try to coach her to, like, tamp it down a bit, have several seats. There will be lots of stops and starts with this clown show of a trial with her outbursts and inability to control herself. It's gonna be a mess. I don't disagree, Rich, but I think it's gonna be less of a mess now that she has, count 'em, 1, 2, 3, um, attorneys. I think between the 3 of them, it'll be easier to manage her. Um, he probably went back when she pulled her Sarah-ness on him, right, and I'm sure there was, like, a lot of love bombing a name here at the beginning, right, and, like, all, well, most abused people, you're always waiting for them to get back to that person you fell in love with. I also think his addiction played a big part in it. He probably was not allowed to drink at his parents' house, or he was more self-conscious of it, like, maybe he drank a little, but they didn't want him, like, falling down, and at Sarah's, he could just drink unabashedly. Um, I feel like that played a part into that neighbor did say Sarah was a tweaker. I know, but the PI was saying she didn't get tweaker from Sarah. I don't know any tweakers. Um, I mean, I remember people was it tweaking back then when they were on crack and, like, out of their mind? But they weren't, like, up the way Sarah was. I mean, I will say she does seem pretty hyper for an alcoholic. Most people mellow out, but that could just be the way, her brain trips on alcohol. I don't know. I haven't seen any, like, evidence of that or any documentation or anyone who knows her saying that they witnessed her taking drugs, so I don't wanna, run that up anybody's flagpole, but I did hear the neighbor say that. How embarrassed her team will be when they are trying to defend her and she acts like a complete clown, and she will do it. Sarah should have used Jerry Springer as her lawyer. Oh my god. Was he a lawyer? Was Jerry Springer really yeah, I know he was the mayor of something. Um, the sound is going in and out? Okay, let me get closer to it. Sorry about that. I wonder if yeah. Objection 1,000 times. My mind just keeps going back to it's been 4 years and 8 attorneys. This stuff should pretty much be done for them already besides the Muslims. I think so too. Like, as far as, research, investigations, because Sarah has been the common thread through all of it. So if she had these ideas, if her attorneys didn't research it, it's a reason, or she didn't tell them back then. Do you know what I mean? But I feel like, well, maybe she was smart enough not to put that in the judge's letters because she would be revealing details of her case, but, I mean, she said a lot of damning stuff in those letters. Kelly D on Dr. Barry Saturday, you literally look like I love me some Dr. Barry. Um, hopefully you guys can hear me okay right now. I think when I came back from putting the dogs out of my room, I must have sat back too far. Okay. It's gonna be a train wreck. I don't think that trio of lawyers care for anything but fame with this nightmare of a client. They know she's going to prison. I feel like the other 2 lawyers are helping out Owens because remember, I do believe that what he said on the courthouse steps is he's got some buddies who gonna help him out, and that's what friends are for. Um, and they're gonna take their hits. They knew this was like a high profile case. Will it help them? I don't know because it also brings out their kind of sordid past. And so, like anybody who hires Beck from now until what is it, 2031 is going to know about his disciplinary action. And I mean, Henderson, it's gonna be forever. The internet is forever. Although they're only accusations and he hasn't been disbarred, it's some pretty damning accusations, and you haven't spoken out against them. Do you know what I mean? Like, you fathered a child with a 13-year-old? I mean, there's an easy way to disprove that. I would be rushing her down to the whatever DNA spot I could find. Um, she'll be testifying, no way that she'll give oh god, that's gonna be her grand performance, are you kidding? The guards are gonna have hell that day, the day she's gonna testify, like, getting her over to the court and getting her out of the shower and getting her on the bus on time, oh my gosh, she's gonna let loose on everybody, because it's gonna be her grand moment to tell her truth. For all of us misinformed, misguided, pointing fingers at her who think of her as a murderer s incorrectly. Um, Samsonite Sarah has and always be her will always be her own worst enemy, yeah. Oh, no, I hope not. I'm waiting to see what outfits. I think now that she has the 3 lawyers, she'll be, better dressed, and hopefully I mean, since they're already donating time, maybe they'll help her get, maybe a nice Ann Taylor suit or I don't know, a Calvin Klein, something where it's, like, fitted and conservative and what is the word I wanna use? Appropriate, I guess, appropriate. Does anybody know what kinda jobs Sarah used to have? I can't imagine her in customer service, but I'm like, what else would she be qualified for? Because she's so, like, um, tit for tat, pedantic. What did she do? I think someone said she was a waitress, the one job where she got fired, but I think she only worked that a week, so I don't know if that was, like, her quote, unquote "profession." Oh, someone asked I work in media, I work on technical projects, for live television. I forgot to answer that part. We have weeks to go before 10/7, and I will bet more lawyers come on board the SB crazy train for fame and attention. She thinks she's won. She can think that all she wants to. There might be more lawyers on it. I mean, the more people there are, the better distribution of work, right? Because basically Owens has said he's gotta put all his other clients, his paying clients, even if they're only paying $50 a month, put their cases on hold so that he's head down in this. Because there is a lot of information I've been following this case for years, but the level of detail from just digging is a completely different picture than what I thought. And even I'm seeing like law and crime and those guys are not getting the details right. Like they reported that Sarah wrote that letter that the people from California wrote when clearly you could tell it wasn't Sarah because when the judge responded, one of the reasons he just struck it from the record was like, you're not even a party to this case. Well, we know Sarah is a party. So, do you know what I mean? And then long time, I think they read one of Sarah's letters and heard like, "Oh, it's been 5 years," and then they took it and ran with that it's been 5 years. Well, if it happened in February of 2020 and we are now in 2024, what how is that math working out that it's over 5 years? You know what I mean? So it's like you have to look at the details in this case. I mean, those are just examples. Obviously, they have no impact on the verdict, but I'm just saying like you don't dig in and understand it, you're gonna miss a lot of stuff, there's so much misinformation out there. And so those guys have gotta get through that discovery, they gotta have conversations about that discovery so that remember, Johnny Depp's team, like, they were tight, tight, tight on that case, and they're passing Post-its, if one of them didn't know, another one of them knew and looked out for their fellow teammate. So that's how they're gonna have to be, like, well orchestrated and understanding what Sarah said and what can be proven, because we've seen Sarah alter the truth, like, right before our eyes, we all watched those fricking boxes get into her dorm after the captain said in writing she could not have them. At least now she'll get to wear the skirt she wanted. Oh, why? Do you think she's why will she get to wear the skirt now? Like, she won't have the stun cuff on? She'll be shackled then, she'll have her feet shackled together if they take the stun cuff off. Like Charlie Adelson had his feet cuffed. Um, but she'll be unshackled hands and waist outside of the sight of the jury, and then they'll put her on the stand outside of the sight of the jury, like, they'll take off her shackles at that point, put her on the witness stand, and then bring the jury in, so they'll never see her. Um, and restraints. She's gonna modify her outfits, lawyers have no control, oh my god. It better not be with Staples, I tell you that. I think that the jailers are hip to her, they'll probably check it before they give her the outfit, because it's a suit, I'm assuming that goes in her property and not in the dorm, do you know? I wouldn't want it in the dorm, who knows who could do what to it. The neighbor's interview was a bit hard to listen to, he seems to want attention as well, that's the vibe I got. Yeah, it was weird, and also what was like I'm not trying to be funny, I'm a disability advocate, but I was wondering if he had, like, a mental health disability because he kept saying, like, "Sarah had bad breath, you guys can probably check her medical records," and I was like, 1, there's HIPAA laws, but 2, do your doctors put that in your medical records that you have bad breath? Like, are they treating you for I didn't understand some of that stuff. Do you know what I mean? And then he was like, "You guys can check, because I want you to think I'm legitimate." Like, he had a burning desire. Who cares what we think? Just tell the story, and then we'll decide for ourselves. You know what I mean? Like, but some of it was interesting, like the borrowing of the money. I wondered why he kept loaning her money. Um, Also, he said that George wasn't there when they first moved in, but I thought they initially rented that place together and then he was removed from the lease. I don't know. There's a lot to unpack there. But again, his mind was also altered at that point, so maybe it's the memory through the drugs that he used to use. It was interesting though, but people in the chat were, like, getting out of hand. Some people were like, "He already said this." I was like, "Oh my god, that's so rude. I hope he's not reading the comments." But yeah, I thought it was interesting. What's good, Tanika? It's terrible and lucky to not be charged with human trafficking. She's stuffing Mexicans into suitcases. Oh my gosh. Oh my god. Is he Mexican? I wasn't sure. I didn't know what he was, but I understand what you're saying. Like, if she would have moved the suitcase, then yes. I have to show you guys this because I randomly once I took sugar bear to school, I was actually going to Dunkin' Donuts. Look what was on. Can you guys even see that? Oh crap. It's not gonna here you go. Ah, damn it. It's not gonna show through the filter. It's a suitcase. It's a suitcase on the you can kinda see it, and it's the same color. Oh, Lord, a break room is not letting me show it off, but you'll have to take my word for it. I'll post it on the community tab or whatever that thing is called, 'cause it's the same color, it was unzipped. I was like, "Man, he was tiny." He was tiny, 'cause this is not a carry-on size, it's like the full-size suitcase, and I couldn't fit in there. I wouldn't even try, but I couldn't fit in there. But speaking of human trafficking, I think Sarah was having again, this is my, speculation, 2 cents. You guys will see when you see the other video with the inmate notes, with Christina Pena, who was in the, Orange County Jail for human trafficking. Because there's all of these things where Sarah keeps putting her stuff in there. They were found in the bathroom together, Sarah and in a single, stall, and they're not supposed to be, so they got written up for that, and now Christina still comes to visit her. She's on her video visit list, and she comes in person to do the video. You could do it from home, or you could do it at a video center, and she comes in to the center to do the, video what do you call it? Video visit with her, which I think is super interesting. Not the most interesting really. Uh, she'll have to act very demure, she'll have to look the part or else the defense team won't have a leg to stand on. Right, she's gonna have to look like, um, she could have been the victim of domestic violence, whatever that looks like to the jury member. Um, he seemed lonely. I think so too, there's one channel, I can't think of it, something biometrics or something where they were looking at she was looking at Sarah's, or Sarah and George's Facebook, and there were times on there where he is, like, looking for someone, and one of the things is like, "Hey, we're too old for hiding, show yourself." Right? He was looking, like, after he had separated from his wife, although people are saying he was still married. If he was still married, they weren't together, right? Maybe on paper they were married because he was definitely lonely and talking about looking for his soulmate, like, publicly on Facebook, which presumably he wouldn't do that if they were, like, still actively working on their relationship. Um, So there was that part of loneliness, but I mean, you could be lonely and hit it and quit it, like, you don't, like, grew up with that person, you know? There's something else going on. Or maybe she felt like that was the best he felt like that was the best he could get. But also, I think the interesting part about the neighbor is he confirmed that Sarah looked down on everyone, right? And this guy had degrees, whatever, like, that's her thing. She needs people around her to make herself feel big. And so George was the perfect tool for her. I wanna know the answer to that. I wish Chelsea I know, like, what was it? What was he waiting 5 minutes for? They will watch what clothing is brought into her because they do have a lot of people, and she will not be able to just do what she wants to do as far as dressing. They let her get in there with the staples, though, but I hope given the attention that all of this has now, um oh my god, the man up it's very weird, to be up in the sky and somebody's, like, walking by your terrace. I'm like, "Is he on my terrace?" Um, that's so crazy. I used to have that it's so that I used to have a dream when I first moved into this place that someone was gonna crawl up there, and my mom was like, "Well, it would just be Spider-Man." She was like, "Just relax." Um, anyway, what is this? Tracy, I totally agree. He seems needy for attention, and this seems like a viable way to get it. Is that Owens? I think he wants to be her savior too. I think there's a part of him that genuinely feels like Sarah needs when he said in that interview, like, "Imagine your daughter or your sister," like, he sees her as a family member, as someone who needs help. Because he even says, like, Sarah, like any of us, came out swinging and fighting," and so he's justifying her behavior as her defending herself. I don't think he's seen all the, like, the IMS records, and in one of the records, she tells them, the staff, "You work for me. You do what I say." That is balls of a burglar to tell that to your jailer. Like, and with some body to it, you know what I mean? Like, full-throated. I want them to show the body cam videos from the time George was arrested, in court because that demonstrates how Sarah used the police as another way to abuse him. So, that is a good point, AKA the cat lady. Do they have to, like, show all of it? Because I feel like the defense might cherry pick some of it. Of course, they have to submit so in court, and so then the, state can balance that out with, like, different snippets of it, but it'll be interesting. I'm actually surprised that he wants that admitted. It doesn't look favorable to Sarah, so, like I said, I think they're gonna cherry pick pieces of it, but, like, the things she says about, like, put the fear of God in him, and he's safe, there's no need to be afraid, and it just doesn't make sense. Y'all are seriously smart, and I'm not, so I'm gonna holler at you later. Oh my god. Okay, so oh my god, there's a lot of oh, thank you. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks for becoming a member. Welcome. Oh, and you gifted 5. Thank you. So nice, AKA the cat lady. If anybody has any other oh, hey, Bama Green Eyes. I saw someone adding you, but I can't see where you are. Traveling Teresa. Hello, hello. You won't say your name. Kelly D, I think opposite SB not wanting to admit intentional act and her attorneys wanted to oh, and maybe because it's her last hope, Northwest, she went along with it, because that's what I was thinking too, like, maybe the one that Thompson had was gonna go with the battered wife. I just don't he can't disclose it, right, because of the attorney-client privilege and HIPAA and all that, but I do wonder, like, what she disagreed with, um calling Brian to testify on behalf of Sarah is a terrible idea considering she beat him as well, and their relationship is adversarial now, I know. He still visits her, though. He's on the video visit log. Um, I thought they had an earlier line to submit list of witnesses. They did, but this man is saying because he has a short time to present, the statute says provide a list of witnesses insofar as you know you have the information to do it. So he's, doing what lawyers do and, saying, "This is how I interpret this statute. You tell me I'm wrong, judge." I believe Brian is a state witness. We don't know for sure because they seal the state witnesses, but I believe, yes, that he is. Their initial meeting was disruptive, the guard wrote a report. It wasn't the first one, it was the last visit that was disruptive, because his first meeting was on the 20th of August. I think that it was I believe it was the last one because there weren't any others in that log. Now, of course, he could have met her, like, the week of, that week that he submitted, which I think was the 31st. I said 28th in the other video, but that wasn't right. It's August 30 or August 30th, whatever the last business day of August was, he filed a notice of appearance. But I think that's when he was like, "I'm not gonna represent you." Whenever they had that shouting match, and he said he went home and talked to his wife and all that fun stuff. Hey, Bama Green Eyes. Um, Different perspective, maybe. There's just definitely was something that the other attorneys didn't feel was legal for them to do, in my opinion. Yeah, or ethical, um, which some things you can do that are not ethical, but are legal, and some things are legal but not ethical, you know? Like, I think cheating on your spouse is legal. I don't think it's ethical. Uh, hey there, how are you? Underwater warble? Oh, no. Let me see. I'm gonna switch it out. Doo, 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 doo. Okay, if I just use the headset mic, is that clearer? I hope it wasn't warbly the whole time. Um, oh, you got one of the free memberships. Awesome. Okay, oh, now it's echoing. Let me know if you guys can hear me. I unplugged the other mic and I'm just using the headset mic. Somebody put a 1 in there if you can hear me. Okay, thank you, Bama Green Eyes. I just saw that it sounded like I was underwater. Okay, thank you, Scranton Strangler. Are you strangling out in, a few of the attorneys stated there were unethical issues on handling her case, for sure, Benkowic said it. Yep, yep, and Judge Craning put that in his 16-page motion. Thank you, you guys. Thank you. Yeah, I don't sound like I'm underwater. Ah, okay. Hey, Angel Mendoza. Thank you. And the thing is, she knew it was dangerous for him to be in the suitcase because the CPS folks that come to talk to her when they found a picture of her son in a suitcase, Brian was like, "Zip it or unzip it." The son is in the suitcase and Sarah is behind the camera. Brian mentions a little bit of it in his car audio interview. I'll pull it up together. I've, like, so many videos to make for you guys, like, as I dig through the research, but I'll get it out before the trial starts. There's just a lot of, like, different pieces of evidence that slowly chip away at any, like, victimhoodness that she asserts, do you know? Part of me feels like she really didn't realize that he would die when she is out there going, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened, and I know people are saying they think that she did it on purpose, hit him with the bat. I don't know. I mean, it's possible, but I don't think she thought he was going to die, and that's why she's saying that part is accidental, which is then hard to come back and say she intentionally killed him. It's just gonna be weird, and some of you guys were even in the comments yesterday saying she swore on her son's life that, it was accidental. So I they probably really wanna take that out of, have that redacted, right? So I don't know, like, part of me feels like she just was dumb and did it, but it still was very much intentional because she didn't let him out. The consequences of her actions caused him to die. That part was not an accident. But who knows? She coulda hit him with the bat. The bat is in evidence. They took the bat into evidence, and the bloody necktie is in evidence. So, yeah. Oh my god. Alright, does anybody have any other questions? Put a question mark in there. I'm gonna wrap it up shortly. I'm supposed to be hanging out with my cousins. Oh, they're at the so if there's anything else, and I'll probably go back and download I'll re-upload parts of this video in StreamYard. It lets you record, a local version and a version in the cloud, and usually the local version is clearer. So I won't do the whole video, like, I'll do edits like I've done with our previous lives. I like the lives because I get to hear what you guys are thinking in real time where I get to see it and we can talk about it. But then I know some people like to listen, like, while they're doing other stuff. I know one of you guys is a dog washer and likes to listen, so you like the longer one. Some people just wanna get in and out. So I always try to get to the point at the top. Like, sometimes when I watch streams and they're, like, lollygagging in the beginning, I'll just hop out and come back later and watch it on replay so I can forward it. Um I try to, do a little bit of like, "Hey, how are you doing?" in the beginning just to see what everybody's up to, but not like for 30 minutes. So, Veronica, you think it was an accident, but she was also not very smart. She didn't think she was doing anything wrong. Right. Maybe she didn't realize the gravity of it, right? But she knew something was dangerous because CPS had contacted her. She knew it wasn't safe to be putting people in suitcases. I don't think she really did mean to go to sleep either. I think she just passed out. But again, then why did you go up the stairs? Like, you already knew well, in her mind, she's never drunk. She can't get drunk. So maybe she did think she would wake back up. But to get up the next morning and be like, "I don't know what happened." Well, why didn't you call 911? Why did you call Brian? And what did she say to Brian the night before at 11:46? He deleted the incoming call, and he was vague with the police when they asked him, "What did you guys?" He knew everything else but that one call, like, half asleep. Like, did she mention George was downstairs in the suitcase? He's gonna take that to his grave because 'cause we'll never know, but, oh my god, I wish we did. It's wonky again. Okay. Yikes. I'll have to test it without you guys. If in the blackout, she would have remembered to delete the videos and remember so many details that are not incriminating. No, if she was in a blackout, she wouldn't have remembered that she took the videos. Like, blackout doesn't let you transfer anything into long-term memory. You know what's happening around you in that moment, but oftentimes too in blackouts, you're gonna repeat yourself a million times, like how drunk people keep saying the same thing over and over. Really drunk people, you'll be like, "Okay, it's not transferring." Um, so they don't remember that they told you that 2 minutes ago. I think she was blacked out. I think she was down the stairs. Maybe really doesn't matter, however, that's never been the point. Exactly, exactly. But I think had she admitted that she was blackout drunk and didn't remember anything and pieced it together, they might have gone for manslaughter. But the fact that she's insisting it was unintentional, accidentally left him in a zip suitcase and went upstairs and went to bed, and then now it's saying she intentionally did it because she was battered. That is wonky. So I feel like the state throw the book at her. Um Drunk driver's still responsible. You're not saying her being drunk excuses anything, but sometimes drunk drivers get manslaughter versus vehicular homicide. Do you know what I mean? or murder. They'll get a lesser charge. And I feel like maybe if she would've just admitted it and said, "I don't remember, I was drunk," who knows? She might be out by now. Yes, ma'am, her attitude really is. Oh. Okay, guys, I'm gonna sign off. I don't know what's going on with the sound. So I'm gonna sign off. But I appreciate you guys coming to check on me and sharing your thoughts. And we'll do it again soon with better sound. Talk to you guys later. Toodles.